Good evening and welcome to this special broadcast of Crystal Meth Toxic Speed. I'm Keith Morrison. We're going to spend the next hour together on radio and television to get the truth about a very dangerous epidemic. We have paid, I'm afraid to say, insufficient attention to this epidemic, and that is one of the reasons why crystal meth has been spreading deadly havoc in cities and towns and villages all around North America. And it has knocked on the door and walked right in to wreck the lives of people here on the Canadian Prairies. And so tonight we launch a counterattack because the first thing you need is information. And so radio and television stations across Saskatchewan, some in Manitoba, in an extraordinary degree of cooperation have come together to carry this program live, originating in the studios of Shaw Cable in Saskatoon. The people in this studio will be our guides. They have come to know the impact of crystal meth altogether too well. Here are some of them. Serge Leclerc, Director, Teen Challenge Treatment Center, Saskatchewan. Sergeant Jerome Engel, Integrated Drug Unit, Saskatoon Police Service. Nancy Kushner, Families Against Meth. Cy Standing, Counselor and former Chief of the Wahpeton Dakota Nation. And we are surrounded here in the studio also by a group of stakeholders and experts on issues around meth. You'll hear from them as the evening progresses. You'll get a chance to call in if there's something you wish to ask or add. To begin with, however, let's get a look at the substance we are dealing with. Aveline Soulier has prepared this report on what crystal meth is and what it does to you.
Crystal meth is a form of methamphetamine. This chunk form of the drug has several names, including ice, jib, and crank. Crystal meth is a stimulant, similar to chemicals found in the body, but its effects are anything but normal.
People take crystal meth or other stimulants because the chemical activates the pleasure pathways in the brain, which here are shown in red. The particular chemical in the red pathways is a chemical called dopamine. So methamphetamine overdrives or amplifies the action of dopamine in the pleasure centers.
Dopamine regulates a person's interpretation of reality. When dopamine is overdriven, the effects are similar to paranoid schizophrenia.
Once the body gets rid of the methamphetamine, then the psychosis goes away. However, since there is now evidence that crystal meth activates a process in the brain that ends up killing off brain cells, producing brain damage, and that we don't know whether it is reversible.
Crystal meth affects the entire body, but the brain and the heart take the biggest hit.
Overstimulating the heart can get into a situation where it is just beating so fast that the blood doesn't flow. And in the jargon of medicine, this is called a fibrillation, which is a type of heart attack. So that the heart is beating so fast that the blood doesn't have a chance to get out, to get in or out, and the person then, the blood flow to the brain is reduced and the person faints or passes out or a variety of other things.
When addicts take crystal meth often enough, their body slows down its production of two essential chemicals, serotonin and noradrenaline. That makes withdrawal a real downer.
The direct action of the drug is to make them feel wonderful. Then in withdrawal, they feel terrible. They feel depressed. They can't experience pleasure in anything. So food has no appeal to them. Friendship has no appeal.
What sets crystal meth apart from other illegal drugs is that it's cheap and users get a long high for their buck. Combine that with the fact that it's highly addictive, and it becomes clear why people fall victim to this drug. In Saskatoon, I'm Aveline Soulier.
You're watching and listening to Crystal Meth Toxic Speed from Shaw Cable here in Saskatoon and across Saskatchewan on the Rawlco Radio Network. We welcome your questions across the province. You can call us toll-free, 1-866-781-2404. Serge, I want to begin with you. Just how tough is it? Once you've felt that high and you go into decline, what does that feel like?
Well, I think it's almost impossible to live at one point in time without it. At least that's what your mind and your body tells you. When you're high, you're impotent. It's immediate high. You can't ever imagine living without it. when you come down from it, you have absolutely no desire to live, to eat, to socialize, to do anything. Your whole desire is consumed with getting back onto the drug and getting high. Your whole life is surrounded with attempting to buy drugs, doing drugs, where you're going to get drugs next, selling drugs. You're totally consumed by it. And so you're no longer doing drugs to feel good, you're doing drugs to stop feeling bad. And the depression is as deep as you can go when you're not high. I went on one time a 2.5-year speed run, and it took me close to 4 months before I was even rational and had the ability to interact with people.
You have seen the evidence of how this affects people, you know, the back of police cars and in ambulances. Tell me about the paranoia, and tell me about the way it affects people's behavior.
Well, the paranoia is to extreme. They're seeing people, usually police around. They're peeking around doors and windows, expecting the police to come in to do a bust or take their product away. Plus, you see the other problems that it causes inside the families. It's more the harm that they're going to do to themselves in regards to when they start tweaking or they're picking away. They will pick at, it feels like they have thousands or zillions of little bugs crawling underneath their skins, and they'll be tweaking and itching away at it, and they'll pick at a certain spot and they'll pick it all the way down to the bone. So it's they do a lot of harm to themselves, plus other people, their families and friends and everyone around them, by the fact that marriage breakups are a result of the usage also.
In addition to lost careers and the rest of it.
Right. They go through thousands of dollars in a short period of time. The drug consumes them. They do anything to get the money. We have vehicles that are broken into so they can steal the change out of glove boxes or in the change holders. They'll steal the stereos out of cars to steal them. They do house break-and-enters to steal whatever they can to sell that equipment to fences and get money just so they can buy the product and feed their habit. They'll also take milk money. They would be going to the store to buy milk. If they run across someone that's dealing the drug, they'll stop and use that money to buy the drug, and their young baby will go without food.
Right. Nancy, you've seen evidence of that?
Yes, I have.
What is that
firsthand.
like for a family to deal with?
Well, it's absolutely devastating. I think that I was blind struck by it. I think that I was still thinking that there were no drugs like that in Saskatchewan, and I'm sorry to admit that I was so naive. I found out that they are. They're only closer.
How do you tell if your kids or somebody else near you is using?
Well, I think that in our case, we didn't want to admit that something was wrong, but the behavior of our loved one was very different. He was withdrawn. He was more aggressive to us, less receptive to coming to family things, disappear for periods of time.
Sure. And did you immediately suspect there was a drug involved, or did you just think he was being a difficult teen?
Well, in our case, our son wasn't a teen any longer,
Sure, yeah.
but we thought it was just, trying to grow up, break away, that kind of thing. But, it didn't take too long once we sort of twigged on that, there was something major going on. And we then set on our journey to try and find some help.
Yeah. Feeling like the bottom had fallen out.
Feeling like we were the only ones in Saskatoon and probably in the world that this was happening to, and judging ourselves, wondering what we'd done wrong. It's just a very, very helpless feeling to see that the person that you love has become someone that they aren't, and that under normal circumstances that they would never have behaved that way.
Standing, what evidence have you seen for the impact?
Well, with my former job, it was over 90% people that we see are drug abusers, and
You're talking your former job in the parole board?
With the National Parole Board,
Yeah.
yes. And so we are trained to pick out in substance abuse, and crystal meth recently has been a major problem.
In fact, Saskatoon is sort of now up there right behind marijuana and alcohol and maybe cocaine, or in that vicinity?
I would say so.
Yeah.
You're talking about crystal meth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in some of the poorer communities also.
Yes, it's prevalent everywhere.
We saw about the story about how crystal meth affects the brain, affects the way deal with reality. And are you, anybody here prepared to talk about those kinds of things? Anybody who has experienced those feelings? Can you tell us how it feels to come down from this drug, or what it does to you?
I'm a recovering addict of crystal meth, and it's pretty much exactly like what you're saying, you know, what everybody has said already. It's the ultimate depression. It's like falling into a deep black hole and you put yourself there and you can't get out. And there's nothing to grab to pull yourself back up. It's just a nothingness. It's what you would ever wish would ever happen to you, ever. It's so unexpected. That's the worst thing, is so unexpected. Because it seems so, like it wouldn't be so harmful. And it's such a temptation, you know? Because it's like nice, shiny box of something. Yeah. It's so pretty, and then you open it up, it's like Pandora's box. You know,
How
it's
long
horrible.
does it take before you can't control it?
It depends.
But fast.
Very quickly. It could be their first time, could be after 2 hoots, could be your first hoot, could take a day, doesn't matter.
Lori at the back, can we hear about some of your experiences?
Yeah, my name is Lori Higgs. I'm a recovered meth addict. The first time I tried it, I was addicted. I was up for 10 days, and after I quit, I was on an absolute roller coaster of emotions. I went from being happy to being sad, and it's very, very lonely. When you quit, it's a very alone time. You feel you have nobody in the world to help you.
Feel like you're right in there now, don't you? In that aloneness.
Yeah, but it's a roller coaster of emotions. You can be happy, you can be sad, and then once you've quit for long enough, you realize the hurt you've caused, and it's hard to work your way back up to getting into a normal life again.
Tell me just a little bit about some of those hurts, because I know that you feel as if you've caused tremendous hurt to people close to you.
Oh, for sure. I've hurt my parents more than anything in the world. My son, who I lost once I was arrested, and everything happened. I lost my boy. I lost contact with my family. Like Nancy was saying, you quit going to family functions. You quit living a normal life. And everything is, you know, meth consumed. You're looking to, drive to Saskatoon, go pick up some more stuff. Everybody around you is just meth, meth, meth. And it's a very, very dark world. But I've hurt a lot of people. And since I've quit, I've been clean now for 29 months. I've repaired a lot of those relationships that I've broken, and still mending some fences. But it's a very long journey back to having a normal life.
And the trip down was pretty quick.
Oh, for sure. Within 9 months, I lost my son, my house, my family, my car, my career, ended up with a criminal record. It was absolutely horrible. I couldn't believe that I had just done that to my life.
Yeah. We want to try to understand what draws a person into this addictive world, and we have someone here with us tonight. Every addict has his or her own story. Hollis Brown, in our studio today, is a musician and father who lives in Saskatchewan, been off drugs now for 17 years. He tells his story of addiction in this report, which is produced by Lisa Unruh.
As a latchkey kid, and also going through a lot of emotional and physical abuse, I just turned wild. I got on this meth trip, and I stayed up 17 days straight, and ate nothing and drank nothing except maybe V8 juice or something like that. I mean, I'm sure there was times when I'd be laying around trying to sleep, and I'd be in a zone, but I just didn't sleep. You'd need to do a line to calm down, a big line, and then I could eat something, and then I could sleep. I lost things. I lost my ability to concentrate well. I lost my ability to read, to spell. From a person that was a constant reader, I'm constantly having to move from one place to the next because I didn't pay my share of the rent, or, just whatever it might be. Getting too stoned, not going to work, losing my job, always having to con people, always burning bridges. There is no place for me. That was the lowest part. That was the lowest moment. I decided, I do want to die. I've had it. So I left from where I called him, and I walked across a parking lot, then across another parking lot, and I found this little little building that was alongside of a business, and I opened the door, and it was where like the water heater and stuff was, and I crawled in there, fell in there, and I shut the door, and that was it. People ask, well, what's it like coming off meth? Well, I've come off a lot of different drugs, a lot of different binges, and you feel bad, but with meth, it's kind of like having your worst flu, and at the same time, somebody's beat you with a baseball bat. And it's to the point where you can't even hardly crawl to the bathroom to use it. You couldn't eat if you wanted to because you couldn't get yourself up to go eat. That moment I was thinking, man, I want off of this. I want a better life. You know, I know it's other people have it. I just want it to. And my bus came, and when it left, I was still standing there. There's a lot of talk about not having a life after. Well, you can have a life after. You're never too old. You're never too far gone. And so that's probably what I bring to the table.
Well, you watch that now. You have a life after, as you say. You look pretty good today.
Thank you.
How are you feeling?
I feel good.
How tough was it to hang on to that, to come back?
Well, it was a process. I was a user in San Diego, and when I came to Saskatchewan, there wasn't any here at that time. And actually in 1989, there was an article in the Toronto Sun that talked about meth, and I had an interview with them that was printed in the Sun. I guess, I mean, I'm relating to everything that's being said here about the paranoia and all that. I have a normal life now, and I'm happy to be here. I guess what I bring here is that you can have a life after. You can get through it.
You can come back.
Yes.
Yeah. We have a call. Melanie, you have a question for us.
Hi.
Hi, Melanie.
Hi, my name is Melanie, and I have a question. Like, injecting, like, what effects does it have on the veins, also on the brain? And if you're injecting, like, into the jugular, what effects are there? Like, what does it do to the body?
Melanie, thank you for the question. Let's ask Serge for an answer. Just hang on and listen to this.
Well, I've had 49 young men in my program since we've opened in 2.5 years. And there's a 30-pound weight gain in the first 6 weeks. Often within the first 4 weeks, we have to take them to the dentist because their teeth have all been rotted out and the gums have been infected. If they have been mainlining or intravenously using, they have calluses on their veins, big open sores. Usually they have hepatitis C. We've had young men in our program that have taken 6 months to be able to remember the front end of a sentence by the time they read the back end of a sentence. It is probably the most devastating drug that there is on the body because of the ingredients that are in it. The hydrochloric acids, formic acid, sulfur, acetones, Drano, nail polish remover, sulfur, fertilizers.
What is the point of putting why all that toxic
Because
stuff?
when you look at it, it's a crystal, it's clean, it's like she said, it's just a little crystal box. And when you take it, it's with immediate high. You're on top of the world, you're invulnerable. And what it looks like and what it does to your body is drastically different. That I've had 70% of the young men that come into my program come from middle-class homes, good families, and just about all of them at one time or another have been in psychosis, they've been in psychiatric wards, they've contemplated suicide, they've ran around fields in the nude, ripping up their bodies. It completely possesses you, but when you look at the drug, it looks so harmless. It looks like a little crystal. It sparkles.
Melanie, thanks for the call.
All right, thank you.
I want to ask if anybody here has experience with this notion that young girls are attracted to crystal meth for its weight loss properties. Go ahead.
Definitely. I know I'm about twice the size I was when I quit. In 1 month, I was up for 21 days, and I lost 35 pounds. And I know all the girls out there think, oh, what a good way to lose weight, but it's not. Your skin hangs on your body, your eyes sink in, You look like almost like you've got jaundice. Your hair is greasy, and you look absolutely disgusting. You might be skinny, but you look gross.
Yeah.
These bones stick out. Your neck bones stick
There's
out.
nothing rational about that desire, though, to be, maybe I'm being harsh, but there tends not to be a rational kind of thinking involved in that need to be skinny.
It's a lot of, media, everybody should be skinny, trying to impress the boys. Guys like you to be skinny. So there's a lot of pressure for teenage girls to be skinny, or even adult women to be skinny, and it works so quick. I think that's the attraction there.
And the danger of it is it's so highly addicting.
Right.
But 1, 2, or 3 times of usage, almost 100% addiction rate. So girls are beginning to use it to lose some weight, for body size, they become addicted. Guys are using it.
Almost 100%?
Almost 100% addiction rate within 3 tries. They say there's a 95% addiction rate within 2 tries. Most of the young men that have come into my program have told me that they have been addicted almost from the first try onwards. And what they're now doing, and Sergeant Inglis can verify this, they're beginning to spray marijuana with it. They're cutting cocaine and crack cocaine with it because it enhances the high. And
But it also is a more addictive substance, and therefore
Absolutely.
it's easier to sell the marijuana or whatever. Is that part of the...
Well, it's homemade. It's a homemade product that they can make right here out of any ingredients that you can buy out of a store. Ephedrine or pseudoephedrine tablets are one of the mandatory ingredients, and everything else you can buy in a store and put it together. To bring in cocaine, you have to bring it across borders, so you've got more policing issues that you have to worry about. Cannabis, marijuana, it's going to cost you more money to produce it because of the power that's required. Crystal meth, if you're using the Nazi birch method, they can cook it up in 45 minutes from start to finish and produce about 2 ounces of product. So it's very cheap to make, very cheap to make. For about $400, they're going to get about $4,000 worth of product. That can be moved out on the streets in a very quick period of time because it was selling for $10 a point, which is a tenth of a gram. Now in our streets, it's selling for $25 a point.
I want to remind you that you are watching and listening to Crystal Meth Toxic Speed on CTV stations across Saskatchewan, on the Golden West Broadcasting Network. We welcome your questions across the province. You can call us toll-free, 1-866-781-2404. We have a call on line 1. Do you have a question for us?
Yes, I'm just wondering, what is the criminal charges for someone who is caught trafficking crystal meth or caught making it?
Production is Section 7.1 of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, which is making the product, and trafficking is Section 5.1 or Section 5.2 of the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, where you have possession for the purpose of trafficking. And to traffic or produce, there are criminal code offenses, and you're looking at hopefully that you're going to get some pen time out of it. You can get life in prison, but that isn't something that normally does happen. We've had some gentlemen who brought in 6 ounces of crystal meth, but he had other various charges along with trafficking or being in possession for the purpose of trafficking cocaine, crystal meth, and some conspiracy charges, and he got 6 years jail. So the combination of it, we like to
Trying to increase the amount of jail time?
Well, we would like to hope that anyone that's producing or trafficking it is going to get in excess of 3 years jail.
All right. Thank you for that. Thank you, caller. I wanted to ask you, Sergeant David Henry, there are pathways for this stuff, and the RCMP is watching for them. What's the trail? What's the artery for it?
Well, it seems to be in this province. It's coming from the west coast.
It's kind of a gradual west to east move?
That's the historical nature of it. It started on the far east, and it came through Hawaii and then the west coast of the States. And it's moving its way west from the west, gradually going east. I was told several years ago, I think in 2003, that we would see it. This was November, and I was told we would see it come from Edmonton, because Edmonton had quite a large problem with it. And then I think in January, Jerome had told me that they had certainly seen it in Saskatoon, and we hadn't seen it that much in Regina, but it seems to be...
coming down that highway from Edmonton?
Coming down 16, right. And it seems a lot of our drugs, we do have an eastern connection with some drugs, but primarily a lot of our drugs do come from the West Coast.
And are you able to determine, I know that crystal meth labs are sometimes little freelance affairs in people's kitchens, but is there organized crime behind this?
Well, certainly, wherever there's drugs and easy money to be made, organized crime will be behind it.
In this case, do you know who, or do you know what kinds of groups?
Well, again, there's different levels that will start and begin to isolate themselves or insulate themselves from prosecution and try to get smaller groups to do their bidding for them. And so their attempt is to try to insulate themselves, and our attempt is to try to work our way back up through that insulation to get to controlling partners.
Well, I want to remind you again that you're listening to this program on a number of television stations and radio stations around Saskatchewan. Some of them are GX94 in Yorkton, CJVR in Melfort, and Border Rock 106.1 in Lloydminster. And let's go back here. Shannon.
Hi, Shannon Dobko. I'm a researcher from the University of Saskatchewan. I have a question for Hollis. If that's all right.
Sure.
Hollis, I'm wondering if you knew how dangerous it was when you started to take crystal meth, and if you had, would it have made a difference?
Oh, that's a tough question. I was probably a hardened drug user by the time that I did crystal meth. And so, having been on various drugs, at the time that I started using it, I was kind of a loner and a drifter, and so the one thing that crystal meth can give you is a sense of autonomy and empowerment, as was mentioned, and you feel like you can do anything on it. And when you're on it, you don't need anybody. You don't need a relationship. You don't need to worry about things. You're just okay. And I guess to answer that question, if I'd have known how addictive, if I'd have known how hard it was to get off of it and what it did to me before I did get off of it, and the damage that I went through, I don't know. I can't answer that question, but I hope to think not.
Go ahead.
I think when I talk to the young men in my program, there's some common patterns that emerge. One of them is marijuana. Tobacco and alcohol all seem to be gateway drugs. Now, not everybody who smokes marijuana will end up with crystal meth, but what I see that as a common pattern. And what I also see is that as they become to use marijuana and alcohol, and things start to get a little rocky with their family, their parents, a little rocky with the grades, they start to party harder. And at that stage of mind, when somebody introduces them to coke or to crack or to crystal meth, they just say, well, here's another high. And their mind isn't centered around how dangerous it is, or this will get me addicted, or more strung out on it. What seems to be an inhibiting pattern, though, for middle-class kids is that they don't like to use the needles. And so they'll smoke it and they'll snort it and they try it, and because it's so highly addictive, as soon as they begin to try it, they can't ever imagine living without the high again, and that seems to be a common pattern of usage.
So if we go backwards then from what you were speaking about, then effective prevention might look at trying to inhibit youth from starting to smoke and do marijuana.
Absolutely, and last year we spoke at 26 high schools. I know that Laurie does a lot of speaking. Ted Merriman and his daughter do a lot of speaking, and I take a couple of my students out when we do high school assemblies. And often after the high schools, the kids will come up and tell us, boy, we never knew this. We didn't know A could lead to B, B could lead to C, or how quickly you could get addicted, or what was in crystal meth. And so a lot of information needs to get out there in terms of prevention for our young people, and I think we often miss them as part of the solution of where we need to go with this problem.
All right, we have a call on line 2. Lucy, do you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Hi, go ahead.
Yep.
I'm just wondering, what are the signs that we need to look for?
The signs that we need to look for in our children or others we know.
In our children or others surrounding us.
Good question. Who wants to take that one on?
Well,
I'll answer
Yeah,
just
go
now.
for it.
Change in personality, absences from the home, workplace, missing workplace, probably more agitated when you ask them what's going on with them, more secretive probably. All the things that as parents we sort of suspect, but intensified probably more,
Sure.
and it's not too hard to tell really.
Violet, you were here with your daughters sitting
Yeah,
beside
Violet
you.
and
You have
Carl.
some personal experience in this question, too.
One of the things I really noticed was long hours of staying awake.
Hang on a
Sorry,
second.
I can't hear you.
Long hours of staying awake, constant activity, and then all of a sudden days of sleeping.
Yeah, no eating.
And no eating. Different, hanging out with a different crowd than before. Not having the same kind of relationships with the siblings that I had that are younger in the house when she came to visit. Lack of attention to, my daughter has one daughter, and kind of not the emotional kind of connection you expect with your daughter and her kids.
Tala, how are you, from your perspective, what does that feel like when you're going through that?
When you're just getting addicted?
Yeah, in terms of what kind of changes do you feel in your relations with others? What way do you perceive that you're different?
You don't see anything. You don't perceive anything. You just shut out the whole world. You don't see what it does to you. You don't see that what is happening. Everything is just peachy. Everything is perfect, and so are you.
Can't understand why people are wondering about you.
What happens is when you do crystal meth, everything that is good is turned around, and it becomes negative. And so everything that you're supposed to be paying attention to, you change, your priorities change, everything. It just flips. Because when you can't feel anymore, and you don't have that respect for yourself, or that will to live, or just the love of life anymore, everything that is life isn't anymore. And it's very difficult.
Yeah, please go ahead on the phone.
The lady that was on before her,
Yes?
the one that was like from PA area and whatever.
All right. Yes?
Okay. I really understand what she's saying, okay?
Have you felt some of those things
that
yourself?
I was in the situation before,
Uh-huh.
and I'm having a lot of problems with my son right now, and he's 14. Reason being is we don't talk. I don't know whether he's doing crystal meth or he's 14 years old. He's skipping school. He's hanging out with 17 and 18-year-olds and everything. And being in the situation before, I don't know what to do.
All right, let's get some advice. We have some people who've been through this.
Yep.
Just from my own experience, not to feel that you're the cause of it. Addiction hits everybody, and there's no, it doesn't care who it picks.
Is there anyone she can call? Is there any group she can attach to give her some assistance?
For myself, I've been sober 18 years, so I have people that I know in the field of addictions that I can contact, and there's many of them in Prince Albert. There's practically 3/4 of the city, I would say, at least a few people
and
there.
addiction services is always a good place to start.
Yeah.
It might not be where you end up getting help, but it's certainly they have programs there that will enlighten the parents as to what to watch and to look for. And I would encourage you, if there's a Families Against Meth, to contact them, because the information that goes between our membership is very empowering, and you find out lots of things.
One more thing on that subject from Lori.
In Prince Albert, there is a Families Against Meth. It's in contact with addiction services, And there's also a youth educator at Maxi Center. Her name is Sina Richmond. I know if you called there, she would be more than happy to talk to you and to help you out.
Families Against Meth, give them a call. And thank you so much for your call.
Thank you very much.
I want to move, go ahead, yes.
Roger Carrier, Saskatchewan Health. To re-emphasize that all regional health authorities do have addiction services, that there's a range of outpatient services, there is detoxification and treatment services available in every regional health authority, and certainly government has recognized that it needs to do more, and there are several new initiatives through Project Hope, which will increase treatment options and outreach to individuals who have addictions.
And I think one thing
I got to speak up against that. I can't let that go. There are no treatment in this province for young people right now for crystal meth. There are no detoxification programs for them. You're putting 6 beds into place in Saskatoon for the whole province at $75,000 a month, and you've got no treatment beds for them, and you're not putting any treatment beds into place to 2007 or 2008 under Project Hope. You're putting no treatment beds for the bulk of the need between 18 and 26-year-olds for crystal meth at all. You're not addressing the issue. And if you go down to school boards or districts like Shaunavon, they have one addictions counselor half a day a week in each town. It's not there. And so you can do the political rhetoric right now.
All right, well, give Roger a chance to respond to those allegations.
Okay. The Saskatchewan Health has recognized the need for more. The stabilization services for youth, Saskatoon will be developing a facility for that. There are currently going to be 6 stabilization beds opening tomorrow, which will assist. There is some treatment at Calder. There will be some interim treatment beds as well developed in Prince Albert very soon, probably within the next month, again to assist youth with addictions. And then in the longer term, there is a project with the Prince Albert Grand Council to develop a treatment facility there.
In 2008?
No, the issue is to fast-track those, and hopefully within the next year, those will be up and running.
The next time a parent calls me and hasn't got a place to send them, and the kid is dying, I'll tell them to call you.
Brian Dykes has got a comment.
Hollis, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing this, but I would be very interested to know how you were able to get your life back, speaking of treatment centers and so on.
In 1988, when I was living in San Diego, when I'd run out of the meth, and then it was pretty tough, and so I decided that I stashed a lot. I stashed drugs everywhere with my meth just so that I could do maintenance, and when I got to the point where I couldn't find him, and I was just so far gone that I went to Yucca Valley, where I had some family there, and they knew I was a meth addict, and so they immediately called Alcoholics Anonymous, and 2 guys came over, and they took me to Lost Heads Ranch in Palm Desert, California. I was able to detox there for a week. It was very difficult, and we do need places for people to go to get off of it, and where we can counsel them and tell them that you're not going to die if you don't use it. You're not going to die. You're going to be okay. It's just the stuff that's going on in your head, in your body, but very difficult. I have a lot of teeth missing from it. I have I have war stories that are common to almost all meth users. But coming to a place where there wasn't any and getting to a 12-step program was my salvation.
I was going to ask that. AA we talk about as a program that deals with alcoholism. Does AA an anchor for people to hang on to with?
Well, certainly a drug is a drug, and while we do the drugs are common, and the effects of drugs, even though they may be more intense with one or the other, there's still the steps to learning how to live without them.
I'd like to say, too, to the caller that phoned in, to keep talking to your son and to keep approaching him. When he knows you're more well-informed about what's actually happening, he eventually will be receptive, and don't give up. Don't give up. Do anything you can to talk to him, get people to talk to him, from the school, whatever. The treatment, I mean, we need the treatment to be ready for the addict. They say needs to be ready for the treatment, but the treatment also has to be ready for the addict. And we have to realize that 28 days is not enough. We can't give them 28 days and send them back into exactly the same atmosphere and expect that they're going to be successful.
Which
We're
brings
not
us
gonna
back
have
to some of your programs, because you're looking, what is your experience with 28-day programs? How
Well,
much time do
the
they...
STIs is 28-day program, short-term intervention. It's a 70s model that was developed from the United States of America to deal with white-collar commercial cocaine use.
How many days do you need?
You need a minimum of 90 days is what government or the Northwestern University or Columbia University is saying. Our program is up to a year. We have found that our guys in our program take at least 5 months before they even begin to balance out and begin to look. And I see nods there of agreement from anybody that's done crystal meth or has had a son. And there needs to be a diversity of treatment, a multitude of maybe 7 or 8 different treatment methodologies that go into place to deal with this epidemic. The fellow who started ARC, Dr. Dean Voss, who was actually one of the program heads here in Saskatchewan at Yorkton at White Spruce when Calvert closed that program down 14 years ago. He went to Alberta and started ARC. It uses this 12-step model for 18 and below with heavy involvement with parents. We run a faith-based program. There's a number of different types of program. Cultural programs for First Nations are needed. So a multitude of treatment methodologies are used. And all of them seem to be the same, long-term.
Long-term. I want to remind you, you're watching Crystal Meth Toxic Speed on the Saskatchewan Communications Network, and you're hearing us on Harvard Broadcasting Stations and Mississippi Broadcasting. We welcome your calls. Our telephone number is 866-781-2404, and we have Brittany from Regina on the line, on line 1. Brittany, welcome to the program.
Hi.
Do you have a question?
Well, no, I'm also a recovering meth addict, and I just wanted to say that you guys bringing this attention to society and addressing this issue is so important, and I just wanted to say that it makes it so much easier for people out there suffering with this issue to know that there's help out there and know that it's not the end of the world.
Brittany, thank you for that.
Thank you.
It's a help. Thanks.
And I'd like to say that I think as a community, we can't expect the government to do everything. It's a community problem. It affects everything in our community. It affects tourism. It affects crime. It just affects everything. And these are Saskatchewan citizens. These are future taxpayers in Saskatchewan. If we spend the dollars on them now, and there are good groups now doing that, private faith-based groups that are doing that get absolutely no funding from the government, we need to pull together as a community and say we can help them.
That's one of the problems, is that government is trying to do it all in this province 3 to 4 years behind the curve, and they can't possibly do it all, and yet they're trying to do it all instead of going into partnerships with organizations that are willing to start stabilization homes. I've had almost 90 young men in my program since we have started. 49 of them crystal meth. I mean, there are programs that the government can come into partnership with.
One quick remark, first of all, from you, Sergeant.
Well, there has to be one more step, and that's reintegration back into society. Once they come out of rehabilitation, the cycle hasn't ended. They need a job, they need something to go to, and a lot of the problems start again because they're back in society. They meet up with their buddies and they start using again, and we're right back where they started. So it has to be a complete component, right from the detox right back in reintegration into society and learn how to work.
We've been talking about recovery and how people recover and how you give them the help to recover. Let's see some tape about this. The problem through the eyes of someone you know or love and who's dealing with a crystal meth addiction. What are they up against? What can they do about it? How can they recover? This is a report that's brought to us by Amanda Bosiak.
Tamara Shepard has been an addictions counselor with the Saskatoon Health Region's Mental Health and Addiction Services for 12 years. In that time, addicts of every age, gender, and social status have come through her door. Many of them abuse more than one drug. So when she works with clients battling crystal meth addiction, it is rare to find that they aren't also using other substances.
Typically, people are using more than one substance. May identify that they have difficulty with one substance, not the other. maybe trying to quit using crystal meth, but maybe still wanting to use marijuana.
This is one of a number of the complications that crystal meth addicts face when seeking treatment. The continued use of other drugs like marijuana or alcohol can result in a slide back towards meth usage. Another problem is the crystal meth culture, or as users like to call it, the show, a highly sexual and aggressive lifestyle.
People become insulated with people around them that use that substance, that live the lifestyle that they're living. And so when you talk about wanting to quit something or change what you're doing, just like anything else, it becomes difficult. And sometimes it's hard to see beyond that.
Finally, there is the physical damage to both the body and the mind.
Crystal meth has the potential to cause a great deal of difficulty in a very short period of time, okay? Generally speaking, okay? One of those difficulties that can happen is psychosis. So it can either bring on psychosis as a result of using, and that the person has an experience, a psychotic break, and then, moves away from that, or it can bring on long-term psychosis.
Addictions treatment for crystal meth is largely based on support for the addict through counseling coupled with community resources and outreach programs. Last August, the province of Saskatchewan introduced Project Hope, which intends to increase treatment services in the province by 60%.
We need to be probably better at reaching out to individuals and trying to either prevent them from having substance abuse become more serious or encouraging individuals to seek the treatment that they really require.
Project Hope includes the establishment of 5 new facilities in the province. While making treatment services more accessible to meth addicts is a positive step, in the end it is all up to the individual and their will to work towards recovery.
I've worked with some people that I've thought, okay, where are we going to go and how are we going to do this with them? And they've amazed me, absolutely amazed me in what they've done and where they've gone and where they are today. So I believe as long as there's breath, there's hope.
As with any drug, crystal meth affects every individual differently, and while for many treatment can be difficult, it is not impossible. In Saskatoon, I'm Amanda Boziak.
And a good thing to know. You are listening to Crystal Meth Toxic Speed on CJWW, Hot 93, and Magic 98.3. And thank you for being with us. I want to go to Tim Hillier. Tim, you're as they say these days, first responder. You're the guy who shows up on the scene when somebody's in trouble.
Yes.
What do you come upon when you come into a house where crystal meth has been abused?
Well, our paramedics are faced with a wide variety of problems. I'm very concerned about the dangers that we face. We see the people at the worst end. We don't see people on a normal day-to-day basis that are just high. Our paramedics see the people who are gone off the edge. And some of the psychosis that Amanda talked about in that segment there causes us serious problems. We've had numerous assaults. I don't think it's any coincidence that we've just gone to wearing bulletproof vests in our system this year based on the increase in violence towards providers. The thing that gets us the most, though, is the effects on family, where we go into a situation for a person who's using drugs and we look around at the small children laying on the floors on mattresses, and that just kind of tugs at your heartstrings more.
They're not being cared for.
Exactly, and that's the biggest concern that I see.
But your experience of the psychosis that has been referred to several times, how out of the ordinary is this behavior?
Well, one example that came up last month, 2 of our paramedics were called for a gentleman who had soiled himself repeatedly and was wiping the floor with it and eating his own underwear, if you can imagine that, and throwing it at the people around him, and this was just a day in the life for him. We have one person we've picked up 3 times in the last couple of months who repeatedly physically and verbally attacks our paramedics in the back of the ambulance and then tries to jump out of the back of a moving vehicle. So we've actually had to set up specific protocols to deal with specific individuals if we know we're going to deal with them just based on the specific risks that we have for that person.
What do you do when you get to wherever it is you're taking them? I mean, what do they do? What does a hospital do? What does anybody do with somebody in that situation?
We like to rely on the police as much as we can when they're available. We like to rely on big, burly security guards at the hospitals whenever they're available. But this is a problem which is systemic, and quite often we need to sedate them and use chemical restraint as well as physical restraint.
All right. Trevor, let's get a comment from you.
Trevor Forrest, Executive Director of the Saskatoon Foundation. We have lots of donors, thousands perhaps, in our database who would like to help. What can we do generally as just the average man and woman on the street as a community to deal with this issue?
Well, Families Against Meth, we've initiated a community scan, and we've realized that if we don't have some treatment after detox, what detox becomes is a revolving door, because they detox, we send them back out onto the street into exactly where they were before. So we're attempting to set up a 6-bed, do 6 beds really well, to take them from detox to into a stabilization bed, to allow them time to heal, get physically better, rest, nutrition. Not necessarily counseling any more than just being in an accepting environment, to prepare them for the treatment beds when they do become available. Because if we don't provide them with safe housing, we'll lose them. They'll be back into the detox.
Sergeant, before you get to those beds, you've got somebody who's been delivered from an ambulance. They've called the police officer to help them. What do you do with them? And I ask you that because I was reading a report from Vancouver where some of the police officers were complaining that they had to leave people who were high from crystal meth in the back of their cars all night long and just sit there and wait for them to come down.
Well, there isn't really much you can do to them. You take them to a hospital and hopefully that they're going to have them committed, but a lot of times you find that they are not unstable enough, so the hospital releases them about 2 hours or 3 hours after the time that they're dropped off, and we wind up having to deal with them again. The other only solution is that they are to be held in cells till such time as they are sober, but that isn't a solution. And when they're in a violent manner and they're injuring themselves, we have there's nothing else we can do but other than to use restraints. And usually, I mean, it's a physical struggle that you're going to go through. And I mean, putting them in situations where they're safe is what we would like to do, but the last resort is to put them in cells and keep them there until...
I don't think there's one of us in our group, Families Against Meth, that hasn't dealt with taking this loved one to the hospital in psychosis, begging for help because you absolutely don't know what to do, and then being told, well, it's an addiction problem, they have a drug problem, we don't deal with that here. Take them to a detox, take them to the detox, they won't keep them because they're psychotic. So what we do is we take them back home into our homes, and if the ones that are lucky enough to have a home to go to, and we detox them there for as long as it takes, and the cycle starts all over again, and we go on the search to try and find a treatment bed for them.
There's nothing, and to answer Trevor's question, the government isn't doing it because they're trying to do it all. And there are good things that the government can do, but dual diagnosis, taking people into the psychiatric ward, which they're not doing now, and mandating it that an addiction problem and psychosis is a mental problem at that time. They can do that. They're not doing it right now. There's no continuity to the system. For Trevor, I was blown out of the water when I looked at the price tag that they're saying that they're going to run 6 beds for in a month, $75,000 for 6 months. Or for a 4 to 10 day program for 6 beds. I run a long-term residential treatment program at half that price for 15 beds.
Right, Trevor wants another comment, but first I think I better go to Roger on that, because these are really serious issues. The government is grappling with them, but maybe it's not doing the right thing.
Certainly the new stabilization facility that's being planned for Saskatoon should help in this regard. As well, the government passed the Youth Drug Detoxification and Stabilization Act last fall, which in those very extreme cases, there will be a capacity to involuntarily commit someone to stabilization services. And that's likely to come into effect, we're hoping about early April.
All right, so I want to remind you, you're watching Crystal Meth, Toxic Speed, on Access Communications, listening to us on Golden West broadcasting stations in Saskatchewan. We want to make sure that we mention all the places where this is being heard. Trevor, did you have something you wanted to add?
Maybe backing up before the addiction as family members and parents, society in general. Any tips on how we can keep our kids from being involved in this from the beginning? Is there education? Is there training? What can we do as a society to do with this?
Brian, have you got something on that?
Or something at some time. Brian Dyke speaking. I belong to a parent group. We have a training program called Parent to Parent, which is designed to train parents how to get in between their kids and the drug culture. And it's based on our own, not our family experience directly, but a family very much like ours. And if I knew in the beginning what I know now, I could have made a difference. And that program is available. And it's been seen by about 3 million people through North America, and done about 15 in Saskatchewan and Alberta in the last few years. And it's a start.
All right, thank you very much for that. I want to go to Sharon on the phone. Do you have a question for us? Are you still there? Thanks for waiting. You didn't wait. Okay, fine.
Well, one thing
Go
I
ahead,
just
yeah.
wanted to say too is I think we need to talk with our kids about it. We need to be open that drugs are available. We need to raise the awareness that addiction is happening in Saskatchewan. And when we get all that done, then we have to erase the stigma of addiction, because I think even when you find out you have someone in your family that's addicted, you're embarrassed to say that that's happening in your family, and that has to change, because we won't get any help from anybody unless we involve the community. There's power in the voice of the community, and we need its support.
Sergeant David Henry, RCMP.
If I could just help with some, what we see in policing is that the issue of substance abuse, in particular drug trafficking, is about trust. And it's trust in the experience for the user, trust in that I'm getting what I should get and I will get the high or whatever. And I think as parents, you have to be able to displace that trust in the experience. And I think you hit the nail on the head in talking to your children, because I think Jerome will help me out here. In 26 years of policing, I've never seen a bag of dope that's got a label on it that's guaranteed money back, phone Better Business Bureau if you want. Young people believe this kind of like a rite of passage. It's something that we should go through, and it's an experience that will happen. And as what the speakers who we've heard tonight will attest.
I wanted quickly to go to a couple more comments. Shannon.
Thanks. When you introed tonight, you mentioned the first thing that people need is information. And that's right. Kids need information, but research speaks really loudly to the fact that they need more than information. Schools can play a huge role in stopping kids from getting involved in drugs and alcohol, but they need to use evidence-based programs. So programs
Got to be honest, straightforward, not scare
also,
tactics, but just the truth.
Right, but also programs which have been proven in research to make a difference. Because there's many out there, and it's really hard for schools to sort out which ones to use.
Tala, last comment from you.
Yeah, just to quickly go back to the recovery thing. It was so true about what we were talking about, how you have to have an individual-based recovery system. Because as many people always ask me how I got off and how I'm staying off, it's very hard to try and tell them to do what I did, because it was very culturally based. Like I drank a lot of tea and we went to a lot of ceremonies, and it was my beliefs, my own beliefs, that helped me get off and stay off, you know. And it is so, like, you have to pretty much douse yourself in who you are or who you were before you got caught up. And it's so different because everybody's a different person.
Well, and they can be a different person once they're through this. There is transformative power. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of our guests for helping to raise awareness about crystal meth in Saskatchewan. Thank you, too, to all the media who have participated in this program, and our appreciation to Rotary Clubs for their sponsorship. We'll see you.